Yeah, that.
Here we go.
Yeah, like
Google suggested search. What happened to Yahoo's stake in Alibaba?
Oh, wait, I forgot about Altaba.
Oh, God.
The remaining company is Altaba, which is a holding company of everything that wasn't Yahoo. Altaba is worth 10 times more than what Verizon paid for Yahoo itself.
Right. Oh, they have a website. Look at this. Company profile. Independent. This is on their website. Altaba Inc. is an independent, publicly traded, non-diversified, closed-end management investment company registered under the 1940 Act. Wow. What a mess.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of Acquired, the show about technology acquisitions and IPOs. I'm Ben Gilbert.
I'm David Rosenthal.
And we are your hosts. Today we are continuing our quest to more deeply understand China tech with Alibaba. So before we dive in, a few fun facts about Alibaba. They had the largest US-based IPO of all time. Alibaba is China's biggest tech company. Alibaba's market cap, even at their current scale, doubled in the last year, and they were valued at over $500 billion earlier this year. So you think about only a few companies are racing up to $1 trillion, and that's gotten all the news cycle. Alibaba, halfway there, growing very quickly. We may see a new $1 trillion company here in the next year or two. They're the number one retailer worldwide in front of Amazon or Walmart. Holy crap. I don't think I knew that before researching this episode. And yet, through all this, they're a bit of an enigma. Founder Jack Ma says that we are not an e-commerce company. We enable others to become e-commerce, but they themselves don't feel that it's fair to have a direct comparison between them and Amazon.
Man, if only there were like somewhere you could go to get a really good story and understand the history and facts of how all of this came to be.
Yes. It's interesting for me. Alibaba, I think before we started doing the research, was of the big Chinese tech companies, the one that I felt like I understood the least. I'm pumped to have sort of a little bit more of my hands around who the company is and how they came to be. So super excited to dive into that today.
One of the hardest, as you say, big Chinese tech companies to understand, and yet arguably the most important one. So Here we go.
Here we go. Well, if you're new to the show, you can check out our Slack at acquired.fm. It's the place where David, myself, and over 1,600 of our favorite listeners discuss episodes right after we release them, along with real-time hot takes and the biggest tech news of the day.
By the way, if you guys haven't clicked the link in the show notes from the Recode episode and watched Kara's interview with Stuart Butterfield when Slack was Tiny Speck, makers of Glitch, and watched her video interview, it's amazing. Let's just say the world is better off that they pivoted into Slack. Oh, my.
Probably. All right, listeners. Now is a great time to talk about a new partner of ours here on Acquired, Legora, the agentic operating system that is redefining how the world's best legal teams work.
Yep. It's sort of obvious that AI is going to completely change the legal industry. I bet most of you listening have dropped a contract into some sort of AI chatbot out there. Legora took that insight and asked the question, what if you really built something with that power from the ground up for the legal industry?
So the founders did exactly what great founders do, operate with obsessive customer focus. They embedded inside a massive law firm for months. They sat with the lawyers just watching how the work really gets done.
And that's how you get features that customers love, like Tabular Review, where you drop in a folder of hundreds of contracts and it pulls every key term into a grid a lawyer can actually work with. Legora's bet here is interesting. Since it lets each lawyer handle more complexity, any given person can increase the quality of their work and do higher value work. And this means that the pie can grow even as each individual task takes less time.
And they recently launched Legora Agent, offering greater intelligence and performance. The agent lets lawyers set an objective. Then it can handle the planning and the execution and delivery of the final product. Legal teams get to maintain full control and transparency since they're still involved where judgment is required.
And Legora works where you already work. You can use it within Microsoft Word while redlining or drafting. The early Legora numbers essentially speak for themselves. When they have a head-to-head pilot with their top competitor, they win 70% of the time. Legora now has over 100,000 lawyers on the platform from 1,200 legal teams in 50 countries. And crazily, they went from 1 million to 100 million in ARR in about 18 months.
Truly insane numbers. And that is the real test. Plenty of things demo well, but the question is whether a busy associate actually reaches for it during crunch time, or whether a partner trusts it before going into a conversation with a major client. If your legal team wants to check it out, whether you're a law firm or you're in-house at a company, you can learn more at legora.com/acquired and just tell them that Ben and David sent you. All right, David, you want to take us in?
Yes, let's do it. 2 quick notes before we do. One, we're going to do our best, and listeners, you will be the judge in this episode, but we don't have Hans and Zara with us, or anybody who really knows the history of Alibaba besides ourselves.
And that's Hans and Zara from the 996 podcast by GGV Capital, which joined us for the Xiaomi episode.
Exactly. And GGV, as we will see along, was actually investors in Alibaba at one point in time. So we'll do our best, but certainly I would expect our audience in China might be more familiar with Alibaba's history than us. So anything we get wrong, hit us up in the Slack and we will correct later. Second note, almost all of the history and facts does come from a fantastic English language book about the history of Alibaba called Alibaba, the House That Jack Ma Built, by Duncan Clark, who is an investor and former consultant and investment banker based in Asia, who actually was an advisor to the company. So he's not just an author or a journalist who came in. He actually had worked with the company and then wrote this great book that came out in 2016. So if you want a even more deep dive, go read the book. But with that, let's start the story.
You know, my research starts in 99 when the company's founded. In my head, I was thinking like, okay, well, like we'll start in 99, you know, we'll take it over the next 19 years. I'm guessing where you're going to start is a little bit before 99.
A little bit before. I was debating going back like how many thousands of years to go back, but I'm going to save that for the Carve Outs. So I promise we will go back thousands of years, but not until the Carve Out.
Perfect.
We are actually going to start in 1964 when a young boy named Ma Yun is born in Hangzhou, China, which is a city about a 2-hour drive from Shanghai. Until recently, it was in the sort of new government classification of cities in China, a tier 2 city. It is now a tier 1 city, thanks to Alibaba, which is headquartered there. But at the time, it was nothing like it is today. This was right before the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, and which is obviously a time of great turmoil in China, lasted from the mid-60s to the mid-70s. And actually, Ma Yun's grandparents, not his parents, were persecuted during the Cultural Revolution. So there's a lot of turmoil going on. But when Ma is about 10 years old, something pretty important happens. And that is that Richard Nixon makes his famous trip to China, opening up China to the West. And that's really one of the beginning moments of the Chinese government and society kind of becoming more open and evolving and towards the form of government that they have today. One of the cities that Nixon visits on his trip to China is Hangzhou. It's an incredibly beautiful city. People back in the West kind of see this and see the video coverage of his trip there. It becomes a tourist destination. And so lots of Americans and other English-speaking people are now coming to China, visiting Hangzhou. And Ma, for some reason, he becomes obsessed with English. He's never been outside of Hangzhou. His parents are like super lower middle class. He becomes obsessed with English. He wants to learn it. So what he does, he starts pretty much every day bicycling from his house to the hotel where Nixon had stayed in Hangzhou, which becomes a tourist destination. And he just hangs out at the hotel and he starts chatting up English-speaking tourists who are there and offering to take them on free tours. And he does all this just because he wants to learn to speak English. Pretty amazing. He does this for like basically all of his like middle and high school career. And while he's doing this, one tourist who he's chatting with and showing around the city says, your given name, Yun, Ma's his last name, but which comes first in Chinese. Your given name, Yun, it's kind of hard to remember and pronounce for English speakers. You need an English name. And Ma's like, okay, like, what do you suggest? And this tourist woman is like, well, my husband's name is Jack, and our son's name is Jack. So how about Jack? And Ma's like, great, wow. I'm now Jack. And that is how Jack Ma
very, very creative of her.
Very, very creative. Jack, also very creative, as we've seen here. Unfortunately, not very good at math. So the college entrance exams, the nationalized college entrance exams in China, place a high priority on math. Jack is not good at math. And still to this day, he gives these interviews. He's very self-effacing, but he gives these interviews. He's like, I don't really understand technology. Like, all this coding stuff is, Greek to me. And it's totally a front, by the way. He fails his college entrance exams twice because he can't score high enough on math. He scores like the lowest percentile possible on math. He's great at everything else. He fails twice. He finally tries a third time. He passes. He gets a high enough grade. He gets into the Hangzhou Teachers Institute for college. This is not a very good college, but he goes there. He learns. He studies English there. He trains to become an English teacher. Then he graduates. He has to get a job. It turns out he loves telling this story. Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, had just come to China. Ben's laughing. I'm sure you saw this story too. Amazing story. KFC had just come to China. They're opening up KFCs all over. They're hiring people to work in, as cash, registers or, cooks in KFC. They're just hiring like anybody with a pulse, basically. They come to Hangzhou. They have 23 open positions. 24 people interview for this position, including fresh graduate Jack Ma, and he is the only person who is not hired by KFC. They hire all 23 other applicants for the KFC in Hangzhou. Jack gets rejected.
And this is the moment where Jack files that away and says, when I'm on stage at Davos and telling my story, this is going to be, you too can make it if you pull yourself by your bootstraps.
When I am one of the richest people in the world and I retire to beat Bill Gates at his own game, we're jumping ahead of ourselves. If there's one thing that he is his superpower, is he is never disheartened or discouraged. He gets a job anyway, working as an English teacher in Hangzhou. He's making $12 a month at this point in time. This is the 80s now, kind of like mid 80s into late 80s, early 90s. China, though, through all this, is slowly introducing capitalism and entrepreneurship back into society. Because during the Cultural Revolution, like, entrepreneurs were persecuted. Anything that looked like capitalism was definitely a no-no. But the government is transitioning. So finally in 1994, he's like confident enough that the business environment has evolved in China and it's now safe to be an entrepreneur. He's always wanted to start a company. He pledges to himself, he's 29 years old. He pledges to himself that now is the right time. He is going to start a company before he turns 30, within the year. So he starts his first company, the Hangzhou Haibao Translation Agency. Haibo means hope in Chinese, and it's a translation company. They're focused on helping local companies, kind of do business overseas with, particularly with English-speaking countries. And at first, it's kind of a side business. He starts the company, but he keeps his job as a teacher, and he's working on the side. And something kind of amazing happens. So he's in Hangzhou, and there's another county just south of Hangzhou called Tonglu. And Tonglu, the county had entered into this contract with an American company to build a highway that was going to connect the county and the city of Hangzhou. And they'd hired this company about a year ago. Nothing had happened. And so they're like, we need to send somebody over to America and just like meet with this company and like figure out what is going on. So they hire the Haibo Translation Agency and Jack, and they send him over to America. Jack arrives in California. So details are a little sparse here. Jack actively says he prefers not to talk about this incident. It was, as we will see, very traumatic. Turns out that the company and the guy behind it were basically a fraud and criminal. Like, there was no company. They had just signed this contract with Tonglu, the county of Tonglu, to build this highway, but there was no construction company. Jack shows up. Unclear if he gets kidnapped or held hostage or something. The guy behind this company, he's like, you can't go back to China and like tell them that, you've discovered that I'm a fraud. He ends up getting held hostage, quote unquote, in a hotel in Las Vegas. Yeah. And he manages to escape from the hotel in Las Vegas and somehow get himself out of the city. And he's trying to get back to China, and he gets to Seattle. He has friends who are also English teachers in Seattle. This is now 1995. He's his first time. He speaks great English. He's an amazing orator, as we'll link to, I'm sure, in the show notes, several of his talks. He's escaped. He's on the run. He finds himself in Seattle. And while he's staying in Seattle, he's trying to find a way to get back to China and back to Hangzhou. A friend of who the people he's staying with is working, this is 1995, working for an internet consultancy business in downtown Seattle, because, it's 1995. Like, hey, Amazon is like there. This is the go-go years, the internet. The friend of the friend takes Jack one day to the office in the U.S. Bank building in downtown Seattle, right there, and shows him, what he's working on, shows him the internet. Jack's never seen the internet before. And he's like, oh my God. It is a life-changing moment. So the first thing he does, the first thing he can think of, he searches on the internet for beer. and Jack's like, when he talks about this to this day, he's like, I don't know why I searched beer. I don't even drink beer. But beer was the first thing that came to mind. And he notices, he searches beer. He sees all these results for American beer, Mexican beer, German beer, but there's no Chinese beer. And he's like, oh, well, I'll search China and see like what comes up. Basically nothing comes up for China. And he's like,
I wonder how he's searching in 1995.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to figure that out either. Like, I mean, there were search engines, right?
Yeah.
Sort of. Are we pre-Yahoo? Yahoo existed, right?
Huh.
Yeah, Yahoo definitely existed. Yeah. And Excite and maybe Alta Vista was around then.
Yeah. This has whisperings of our previous episode with Kara, where she was like, I saw the internet and just instantly got it. Like, this was going to change the world. And I think Jack had that sort of similar insight of like, I don't know why anybody's doing anything else.
This kind of like basically directly leads to Alibaba here, although you're gonna have to sit through another 20 minutes of history and facts before we get there. but he searches China. He's like, all right, well, nothing shows up, huh? I should just like make a page for Hope Translation Agency, like this is great. People search for China and then they'll find my translation firm. So on the spot, he's in the office of this internet consultancy. He just hacks together like he has them like, he's like, oh yeah, put like my info up there. They create a website for Haibo Translation Agency, and there's only text, has the name and a phone number, and there was an email address. It must have gone to the internet consulting firm or something. Later that day, they get 5 emails for translation business requests, 3 from the US, 1 from Japan, 1 from Germany. And so his friend, the friend of the friend is like, hey, Jack, you've got some like business requests coming in. And he's like, business circle? Like, what? This is nuts. So, like, this is probably more business than they've done in like a year. And so he's like, okay, now I see the opportunity. I need to like, forget making this translation agency. I'm going to need to go back and I'm going to build a whole company to help Chinese businesses list themselves online. Like, this generated so much demand for me. Like, imagine all these other businesses in China.
Do you know what else he saw and vowed while he was visiting Seattle?
To crush Amazon? No.
He apparently looked, he was like over on Queen Anne Hills, a neighborhood in Seattle, and like looked around and saw a bunch of big houses and vowed, one day I will be rich enough to buy one of these houses.
And it's so, I mean, literally while this is happening, like, I'm sure, so I looked this up. Amazon was not yet in there. I think it was their second or third headquarters was in downtown Seattle. I think they were still down in SoDo. I'm sure Jeff Bezos and Shel Kaplan and everybody were like just a mile down the road working on Amazon at this very moment.
It's crazy to think about.
Totally crazy. Before he flies home to China, Jack does a deal with this internet consulting firm because, like, as far as he knows, like, they are the internet. They're the gateway to the internet. He flies home to China and he brings a computer with him. He gets back and he creates a company. He has a deal with the internet Seattle firm. He calls it China Pages, and he's going to do exactly what he said. He's going to start building websites for Chinese businesses. So he starts going around Hangzhou and talking to all these companies that produce things or offer services, and like, hey, we can get you business. We'll put you on the internet. The one problem is that the internet doesn't exist yet in China. I mean, you can get on the internet in China, but like maybe only the government can. Like, definitely nobody in Hangzhou is on the internet. Like, and definitely not these small businesses. So they're like, are you trying to scam me? Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't go super well. Like, he gets some customers, but it's not a wild success. At the same time, I mean, the government sees the power of the internet. They are starting to push the internet and technology through the state-owned enterprises as like a way of the future and something China wants to get involved in. Turns out that there was a state-owned, an SOE, a state-owned enterprise-backed company that was also doing sort of the same thing. They end up acquiring China Pages and rolling it up into this quasi-government, quasi-private entity. Jack moves to Beijing.
That's not like, when we think about an exit, that's not like life-changing for Jack in any way.
Unclear what the economics were here. I mean, basically, like, the government acquired the business. Certainly not life-changing. And as a result, Jack moves to Beijing because that's where the government is. He ends up leaving the company. He's kind of disillusioned at this point. Well, I mean, he's not easily disillusioned, but he's disillusioned with this company. He goes to work for another government agency that's working on another initiative for bringing the internet to China called InfoShare. And he's really interested in this. He thinks, okay, this is like great. The government is now going to push what I was trying to do with China Pages. And InfoShare launches the China Market site. And what the China Market site, the goal was to allow producers of commodities, so I don't know, soybeans, rice, whatever commodities, nails, parts, whatever, to list their goods for sale on this site and for buyers to contact them. And all of the discussion is going to happen in these secure chat rooms on the site. And this is essentially what Alibaba would become. But because it's a government agency, you have to go through, both buyers and sellers have to go through an insane amount of bureaucracy just to get onto the site. They got to go to like the local government agency. They got to register. They got to wait for all this stuff. They got to talk to, 1,000 ministers. So Jack is like, this is it. Like, this is what is gonna work. But like, there's all this friction, all these barriers to entry. He's like, what's gonna happen? At the same time, Yahoo, which we referenced earlier, has just gone public. They are like the world, internet darling. Everybody in America is crazy about Yahoo at this point. People in China are figuring out, this portal thing, like, and it wasn't search at the time, it was directories. This is like the key to unlocking the internet for consumers. So there are 3 companies that sprout up in China: Sina, Sohu, and NetEase. So they've all popped up. And Jack, of course, sees all this happening, and he's like, okay, this is really interesting. Yahoo, this is pretty interesting. 1997 rolls around. Jack's been doing this in the government for a little while. And turns out, who comes over to visit China and visit Beijing and the government? Jerry Yang.
Even better than Richard Nixon.
Even better than Richard Nixon, exactly. Not CEO at the time, but founder and chairman of Yahoo. Jerry comes to Beijing. And the government is like, all right, well, we need someone who like is both a government employee and gets this like internet thing to kind of show Jerry around. And who does that end up being? Jack Ma.
It's pretty cool. I didn't realize until digging into this a little bit that was, long before Alibaba that they started this relationship.
Well, not that long before Alibaba, as we'll see. But yes, before Alibaba, it's when Jack's a minister in the government, and he's the envoy assigned to Jerry. And so he goes. There are these great pictures of Jack and Jerry and some other Yahoo executives, on the Great Wall of China, doing all these, tourist sites, and Jack's there with him the whole time. So as he gets to know Jerry, he realizes that, like, okay, my vision here, if there's any chance I'm going to realize it, like, it's not going to happen within the government here. I need to go become an entrepreneur and do this. So he leaves the government. He leaves Beijing, moves back to Hangzhou. And he brings a bunch of his colleagues from the China Market initiative within the government. He brings a bunch of them back with him to Hangzhou. And he decides that they're going to start a company. So Jack and his wife rent an apartment, very famous apartment that we will see, at building 16-1 Lakeside Gardens in Hangzhou. They start the company there with all these people. There are 18 co-founders of this company. So
it's amazing when you look at like the founding photo, like you expect to see like a few people in a dorm room or a few people in a garage, or this must have been like maybe a year into the company or something, but like, nope, it's all 18 people. They're all co-founders. They're all piled into this apartment.
Yeah. I mean, what was it when we did the Xiaomi episode? It was like there's 7 or 8 co-founders of Xiaomi or something like that. Like, yeah, 18 co-founders of Alibaba.
It's kind of amazing. It's like it's the tech theme a little bit, but like think about if you can actually stay organized, what an accelerant to a business if you have that many people from day one instead of, biting and scratching for every person you're going to bring on, especially if you've all worked together before.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Not only is this like the team is fully formed, but they've all built this already within the government. Like this is an airlift here. They just airlifted the team from Beijing to Hangzhou. So Jack's trying to figure out what he wants to call the company. He doesn't want this to be just a Chinese company, because remember, this is all about international trade, and he wants these businesses, commodity suppliers and other businesses, to be able to do business with companies anywhere around the world. On the first day of the website for his company, he had requests from the US, from Germany, from Japan. He wants a name that'll work in any language. He also wants a name that starts with the letter A. So he settles on Alibaba. He's inspired by the term open sesame. It was something like he thought of the name, and then I think he was like at a cafe and then asked the server, when I say Alibaba, what does that mean to you? Or what does that invoke to you? And the server says, open sesame. And he grins and he's like, perfect. And then he goes and he like asks like 18 people on the street the same thing. And then he gets like some significant number also said open sesame. And he was like, perfect. Perfect. Yes, exactly. Yeah, he starts wandering around Hangzhou, asking all these people, English speakers, Chinese speakers, everybody. And everybody's like, yeah, open sesame. And he wants like Alibaba to be the magic word to opening business opportunities. So and that's of course from what's the classic story, the Arabian Nights. 1001 Arabian Nights.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he starts the company. Turns out Alibaba.com is owned by a Canadian guy. I think it takes them about a year to negotiate buying the domain name from them. But they do buy Alibaba.com for something like $4,000 or something from a Canadian businessman. Domain names just keep showing up unacquired.
I know. Boy, if there's one thing that's constant among a bunch of our companies, it's long drawn out domain name acquisitions.
Seriously. So they start the company, and it's exactly what as we've said, what they were doing with China Market. It's a bulletin board for businesses that businesses are gonna be able to find demand for their products or services, and then be able to chat with potential customers and facilitate transactions. This may be apocryphal, but Jack talks about this now. He kind of takes inspiration from his favorite movie, which is Forrest Gump, and the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company in Forrest Gump, where the shrimp company, like, they made their money. They turned into a big business by harvesting shrimp, like tiny shrimp, like not like big swordfish or whales or whatever, like all these other businesses. And so he's like, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to harvest the shrimp.
And then invest in Apple. Like that's
yeah, exactly.
Slightly different. Yeah.
So he's like, we're not going to focus on big businesses. We're going to focus on really, really small businesses, the shrimp. And it was like, okay, so they get going and they start signing up these small businesses. As they're getting going, a pretty unlikely person with a very different background somehow hears about this new company, Alibaba, a guy named Joe Tsai, who is a Hong Kong-based private equity investor. And Joe's pretty interesting. So Joe grew up in Taiwan. And again, remember, like, Jack grew up during the Cultural Revolution and, Taiwan splitting, and Jack's grandparents were persecuted, but Jack's family stayed in China. They became communists. So there's a little bit of a, like, culture clash there. Joe grows up in Taiwan. He ends up coming to the U.S. He goes to the Lawrenceville School. He goes to prep boarding school, Lawrenceville in New Jersey, right down the road from Princeton. He ends up going to Yale for college. He goes right into Yale Law School. He then works for, I believe, Sullivan and Cromwell, a super white shoe law firm in New York. And then he gets into private equity, and then he comes back to Asia, and he's working in Hong Kong as a private equity investor. So, like, completely different background. And he hears about Jack and Alibaba. He's like, I got to go visit this guy. So he goes over to Hangzhou. He visits them in the apartment, and he's like, this is crazy. Like, Jack is completely nuts. Like, this guy is like crazy, but he has these 17 other people that are with him, and he decides, like, if one person has this crazy idea, like, he's probably crazy, But if you've got 18 people, it's probably a movement.
We will definitely link to this in the show notes. Dave and I were iMessaging about it last night. There is a wildly cool video from this time period of Jack Ma sort of rallying the troops. He's getting everyone fired up, and he's pacing around the apartment. And it's, 1999?
Actually, it's a little later. So this is when they launched Taobao a couple years later. So the apartment's going to come back.
It looks like it's about 18 people. I mean, the team doesn't seem significantly bigger.
I think it's like 7 or 8 people that launched Taobao. But basically the same thing had happened with the original Alibaba.
The takeaway from this video is a fewfold. One, he's sort of lecturing on the verdict of hard work and of the virtue of hard work. And he said, look, if we're an 8 to 5 culture, then we should all go get different jobs. There's other things for us to do here. We're going to be round the clock. This is all in. The only way we'll win is by doing this. And the second interesting point is he looks and says, I have been to Silicon Valley and I have seen the way those companies work. And he's alluding to Jerry Yang, of course. And he says, we need to be more like them. And we need to go and have that work ethic, not the work ethic that, we're used to here. And hearing that from 99 is totally fascinating, because that is in many ways completely flipped now. I mean, heck, the 996 podcast is called 996 for 99 hours a week, 6 days a week. The Chinese work ethic is, near unmatched when we look at the...
this is really the beginning of it. And the other important point he makes is that our competitors are Yahoo, our eBay, our Amazon. They're not the other companies in China. And nobody else was really thinking this way at the time. And so Joe is like, he's smitten. He goes back to Hong Kong and he tells his wife, he's like, I want to go join these guys. And his wife's like, how about we both go visit them? So Joe, he's making over $700,000 a year. This is 1999, making over $700,000 a year doing PE in China. He brings his wife over, convinces her that no, this is going to be a thing. They move to Hangzhou and he accepts a role. He's the COO and CFO of this newly formed company, Alibaba, for a salary of $600 per year.
It's Jobsian.
Yeah. Unreal.
Well, it paid off. So
probably, maybe at the insistence of Joe's wife, Joe's like, we need to go raise some money for this company. So he's like, I got this. He's super white shoe. He knows all this stuff. He's working in private equity. He's like, we'll do this. We're going to go over to California. We're going to go over to the US. We're going to go to Sand Hill Road. We're going to go pitch all the VCs. This is great. We'll raise money. Let's just put together a pitch deck. And it's 1999. We'll raise money. No problem. Jack is like, I don't do pitch decks. I just tell the story. And Joe's like, no, I really think we should have a pitch deck.
It's very Rec Room. Nick, if you want to, yeah, you can come and hang out in VR if you want to hear our story, but I'm not going to send you a PowerPoint.
Yeah, and that worked in 2016. That doesn't work in 1999. So they come over. Everybody at Sandhill's like, yeah, who are you guys? You're in China? You're doing what? Yeah, send me your deck. Anyway, it doesn't work. They come back. They haven't raised any money. But there is something that happens shortly thereafter, which is a company called China.com goes public. And this is the .com boom. Nobody even knows what China.com does. It may or may not do anything, but all of a sudden it has a multi-billion-dollar market cap. And everybody's like, China, the internet, big opportunity. So Goldman Sachs, of course, has an office in Hong Kong as well. And there's an investor there named Shirley Lin. And she knows Joe, and she's looking now for Chinese internet investments. And she sees that Joe has gone to move to Hangzhou and joined Alibaba. She's like, I'm going to go see what's up. So she comes over. She comes to the apartment, building 16-1 Lakeside Gardens in Hangzhou. And she's like, how about I buy your company for Goldman? And Jack and Joe are like, well, we don't really want to sell a majority share to you. And Shirley offered $5 million for a majority share of the company. They negotiate her down to 50%. They're going to sell 50% of the company to Goldman for $5 million, $10 million valuation.
Boy, that is a dilutive little seed round there.
Large seed round, very dilutive. Shirley brings it back to Goldman Investment Committee, and she's like, that's $5 million. This isn't going to be a big deal. And Goldman's like, I don't know about this. This seems crazy. Can we reduce our stake down and syndicate some of it? So they do. Goldman invests $3.3 million. They get a 33% stake. They syndicate out the rest of it, and they raise $5 million. So they start growing. A couple weeks later, Shirley's like, she really likes these guys. She's taken by Joe, taken by Jack. She starts talking them up. She talks them up to another Goldman client, Masayoshi Son, over at SoftBank in Japan.
Unfreaking believable.
Totally unbelievable. So remember, Jack has already met Jerry Yang fortuitously through his government job. Now Goldman has invested in Alibaba, owns 33% of the company. They're talking it up to Masa, and they're like, yeah, you should just come meet this guy Jack. Masa meets Jack in Hong Kong. Within 5 minutes, Masa's like, I like this guy. I want to invest. Typical Masa moment. Conviction-based investor. And I don't recall exactly, but I believe his initial offer is he wants to buy a lot of the company. He's like, how about I invest $40 million in the company for a 40% stake. So remember, they were just valued a couple weeks ago at $10 million. Goldman was going to buy half of it. They got cold feet. They,
it's
bought
like they're a
33%.
scooter company or something.
Seriously. A couple weeks later, nothing has really changed. Masa's like $100 million valuation. I'm going to buy 40%. So again, Jack and Joe, they're like, I don't know. How about half of that, $20 million for a 20% stake, same $100 million valuation. Masa apparently emails them back like within minutes, and he's like, go ahead. I'll have my people see to it. Within weeks, they go to Sand Hill, they strike out. Now they've got $25 million. They're valued at $100 million. They've sold a lot of the company, unfortunately, though, as we will see. So they have all these resources. What do? They go back to Silicon Valley, and they hire a senior engineer away from Yahoo named John Wu to become CTO of the company. And they're going to build the technical team in Silicon Valley.
Bold.
Yeah, very, very bold. So this is all, year 2000 now. Unfortunately, though, the bubble bursts. And all of this behavior, the tide goes out, and everybody who's, not wearing swim trunks gets exposed. Alibaba is, of course, part of this. Fortunately, though, they had not spent that much of the money when the bubble popped. They still had $20 million in the bank, but they've got this crazy structure where they've got a Silicon Valley tech team. They still have no business model, by the way. They're listing businesses. They don't take a take rate on the transactions. So they have zero revenue.
Just to make sure we hammer it home, because I think it's important to be explicit about this. They're a B2B marketplace. They are helping small and medium-sized businesses find other small and medium-sized businesses, doing international commerce. There's some structured, some unstructured. So there's sort of discussion boards for unstructured sort of commerce or negotiation. And then there's the structured, Amazon style, I'm going to click this button and buy this many things. But it's really...
And I think at this point, it's really just all unstructured. It's just a bulletin board. Maybe there's some of the structured stuff, but they're only beginning to build that.
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of anchor on, okay, that this business doesn't really look anything like Amazon. They're not a first-party seller. They don't have a formalized third-party seller ecosystem. It's, hey, if you want to do commerce, you should come here and we'll loosely help facilitate that. Money can flow through our platform.
Exactly, but they don't take any of the money.
All right, listeners, now is a great time to tell you about a longtime friend of the show, Vanta. AI has scrambled the whole security picture. It used to be that you proved that you were secure once a year, an audit or a static PDF, then everyone would nod and you're done. But in an AI-first world, that doesn't hold up anymore.
Yep, your risk surface changes every week now. A vendor turns on an AI feature or someone writes in a new model without telling IT, and your posture is different than it was last week, let alone at your last audit. Vanta's own research found that around 70% of companies have this quote-unquote shadow AI running with no security review at all.
Right. And that's where Vanta comes in. They're the leading agentic trust platform, meaning they've built the thing that closes the gap. And the way that they close that gap is Vanta Agent. Think of it as a GRC engineer, that's governance, risk, and compliance, except that it's software and it doesn't sleep. It finds the issues, drafts the fixes, and cuts the time that you'd spend on vendor assessments in half.
In half! Which is exactly why more than 16,000 companies today run on Vanta. Companies like Ramp, Cursor, and Snowflake all stay audit ready and catch the risks that crop up between audits across every vendor, every AI tool, the whole environment.
And that's the real value. Trust has to be continuous now, which is why Vanta automates your security, your compliance, and the work to earn and prove trust. We're huge fans of Vanta over here, and literally hundreds of acquired listeners have become Vanta customers at their companies over the years. So you can get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/acquired. That's VANTA.com/acquired for $1,000 off, and just tell them that Ben and David sent you.
So the bubbles burst. It's now 2001, and fortunately they have the 20 million in the bank, but they have kind of no prospects and no business model. They hire a guy from GE, Savio Kwan, to come over as COO and kind of be the adult in the room here. Jack ends up giving half of his office to Savio. Savio's like, you have this Silicon Valley tech office. This makes no sense. Let's shut that down. That's gone. They cut monthly burn by half, and they kind of write it out, and they figure out the business model. And the business model that they land on, they're kind of inspired by, remember the meeting with Jerry Yang and Yahoo really working. They figure out that taking a take rate of transactions doesn't make a lot of sense in China because it's such that's orthogonal to the way things work there. People are coming online for the first time. They don't understand why they would give a cut of their business to somebody else. What does work is sort of what Yahoo does and what Google does is getting these SMBs, get them more business, they're totally willing to pay for more business. And so what they land on is essentially an advertising based model where anybody can join Alibaba, list their services in the marketplace. But if you want to get featured in the marketplace and have more prominent placement, you can buy placement.
It's like a pay to promote, kind of like how eBay let you in the old days. I'm sure they still do something similar, put a purple box around and appear first in search results. And sort of you can either pay on a SaaS basis or pay on a per transaction basis, a per listing basis to sort of bump up your likelihood of being the selected supplier.
Totally. Or like AdWords, right? People are searching for things. You can get the organic results, but there's also the featured AdWords at the top. And so kind of as a result of this, Alibaba essentially becomes if you imagine Amazon and Google all in one, imagine Amazon without Google, where everybody is searching, the place where you start your search for something is Alibaba, and the place where you transact is Alibaba. Turns out that's a pretty good business model.
Yeah, and it's important to point out too, you mentioned it doesn't make as much sense in China for a business to just say, oh yeah, you can have a cut of the revenue because that's sort of the expectation that there's all these pieces of infrastructure and we give a little cut of revenue to each one and we're able to preserve some amount of margin and then that's our business. In China, even today, the e-commerce ecosystem is so much less developed. The sort of delivery system and the payment processing and all, I think we take for granted in the US all this sort of trusted infrastructure that exists that make it really easy. If you want to just become your own e-commerce site, you can. I mean, Shopify makes it easy. The payment processors make it, all these things make it easy. In China, it's ludicrously difficult to start your own e-commerce company. And so it makes tons and tons of sense to go do it on another platform. It's not painfully obvious right away when you're like, oh yeah, they'll just take a cut of revenue. That's the way that these things work.
Well, you got to remember too, in the US, pretty much everybody at this point knows what the internet is. Now we're into the early 2000s, businesses understand oh yeah, it's a commerce platform. And this is not the case in China. People don't know what it is. And so Alibaba actually, they develop and still have an extremely large sales force. These are people that are going and knocking on doors of physical, small and medium sized businesses throughout the country, in the provinces all over, and being hey, we can get you more business via this thing called the internet. Don't even worry about what the internet is. I mean, at this point, everybody knows what the internet is. But back then, it was hey, we'll just get you business. It's a super different education and value sales proposition.
It's interesting thinking about outbound sales to do education around you should have your business on the internet.
Totally. I mean, US-based internet marketplaces, the saying is, this is actually not true in practice, but the belief is oh yeah, you don't spend money on acquiring supply. Supply comes to the platform because your eBay or your Airbnb or whatever, and people are like, oh, I can make money doing this. Like, of course I'll join the platform and make money and then give the platform a cut of the money. That's not how it works in China, at least at this time. So it starts working really well. 2003 comes around though, and they've got a challenge, which is eBay has decided that they want to be a global company. So Meg Whitman is now CEO of eBay. eBay has gone public. They're, one of these darling internet stocks, even though, they've kind of made it through the crash. Yahoo is in shambles. eBay is the new Silicon Valley star. They decide they're going to go global. They're going to come to China. And how are they going to do it? They end up acquiring a company that was a competitor to Alibaba called EachNet. But they're focused on consumers. Now the line in China between consumers at this point and the very small businesses that Alibaba is going after is pretty blurry. And so there's while Alibaba as we've said is always a B2B marketplace, like it's actually not that different. I mean, some of these are very, very small businesses run by individual people offering goods and services on the platform. It's not that much of a stretch to say like, this kind of looks like eBay in a lot of ways. Jack is now pretty worried that eBay and EachNet are going to start coming after them and competing with them. He decides he needs to do something about it. But the main Alibaba platform, he doesn't think is the right way to go about it because it's all the marketing and all the positioning is focused on B2B. So what does he do? He creates a skunkworks team. This is where the video comes in of the top people within the company. And he's like, we're going to go somewhere. We're going to start a new product within Alibaba. Where are we going to go? We're going to go back to the apartment.
Okay, that starts to come together.
It comes back to the building 16-1.
Very like
Lakeside
Steve
Gardens.
Jobs and the Macintosh.
Totally. They're going to fly the pirate flag in the apartment complex. I believe there were 7 people who started Taobao, what would become Taobao, within Alibaba. In this apartment, he gives this amazing speech, and there's a documentary being made, and that's why the video is there. We'll link to. I think it's called "The Crocodile in the Yangtze" or something like that. We'll link to it. And he's like, we need to build a official B2C, marketplace here in China to compete with eBay. They decide that they're going to call it Taobao, which literally means treasure hunt. And it's completely secret, totally clandestine. Nobody at Alibaba knows that this is happening except for Jack and this skunkworks team. So they start building it, and then to test it, they were like, well, we can't let anybody know we're doing this. Why don't we just like start buying and selling stuff on the platform ourselves? So Jack gives Anita, he's like, everybody's got to go home, find 4 things that they want to sell on the platform, bring it back, and then like we'll list them for sale. So they find a bunch of stuff, they list it for sale, then they're just buying and selling stuff themselves. And then they start telling a couple people, and then slowly third-party demand comes on the platform. They're still just selling their own stuff. It's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It just starts building and building and building, to the point where people start hearing about this new site called Taobao. People are talking about it in Hangzhou. Alibaba employees start coming to Jack, and they're like, Jack, like, we've got a new competitor.
No way.
Totally. And he's like, and people are getting really
You
worried
all have
about
shares in that competitor.
Yeah. So he finally does a big corporate event, does an announcement, brings the team on stage, and announces that Taobao is Alibaba, and apparently like people go nuts. Totally awesome. So they start now competing against eBay, and like they start winning. So the other important thing about Taobao is, just like Alibaba, they don't have a take rate. So they're not taking a cut of the transaction. 100% of the money goes from the buyer to the seller.
It's a pretty good way to grow.
See,
and eBay, of course, takes, has a cut, and if Meg Whitman's there, they're either about to be or are a public company right now. They have pressure to
definitely public company
have margin here. They're taking a take rate and they're having fees because that's eBay's business model. And Taobao says we're not doing any of that, at least for now.
Yep, not doing it. And indeed, eBay goes on a total offensive because Taobao starts taking market share. eBay had basically 100% market share of B2C, of an eBay-like product in China. It drops to 50% within a year. Taobao's taking share. eBay, Meg Whitman and a whole bunch of the senior executives at eBay, they actually moved to China for several months because they're like, this is so strategically important that we are going to go all in and turn this around. There's an HBS case study about this, of like eBay's complete fiasco in China. And they're pummeling Alibaba in the press. They're like, this isn't a business. This is like, you're selling dollars for 50 cents and like, we have a real business. In the meantime, Meg comes over to Hangzhou and meets with Jack and tries to buy Alibaba and offers $150 million for Alibaba. Remember, they're already valued at $100 million several years ago from SoftBank and Masa. Jack and Joe are like, no.
No, but we may use you as a stalking horse.
Well, that will come around in just a sec. Yes, no but. no yes, to and. You, but maybe to somebody else. Externally, in all of their earnings releases, eBay's talking up like how great they're doing in China, but internally, like they're super, super worried. So after this meeting, Jack and Joe are like, okay, eBay's like literally Meg Whitman is now living in China. We need to do something. We haven't raised any more money since the SoftBank round. We need a lot more resources to compete with eBay for Taobao. So they go over to who else? Jack's old friend, Jerry Yang.
Hey, remember when we were checking out the Great Wall together?
Yeah, exactly. So they meet with Jerry. Jerry's pretty excited about what's going on. Jerry offers $1 billion for a 40% stake in Alibaba. The fundraising history of this company is insane in terms of valuation. It's kind of like today, insane in terms of valuations, but like they are selling just huge chunks of the company. They do the deal. So they sell another 40% of the company to Yahoo. And Yahoo had already tried to invest in some of the other portals in China, and they'd realized, just like Jack had come to the realization that like a portal / search engine type business doesn't make as much sense in China. What makes sense is this fully bundled, eBay, and Amazon plus Google model here, Google or Yahoo. And SoftBank was already a major shareholder in Yahoo through the Yahoo Japan partnership. So Jerry's like, okay, great, let's do this. I'm going to make a big bet.
Jack is super inclined to do this because he trusts Jerry. He thinks Jerry's going to be around for a long time. I'm really doing this deal, as a person-to-person deal.
Indeed. And I mean, Jerry, like, this is huge conviction. I can't recall exactly, but Yahoo only has like $3 billion of cash at this point, and they've gotten pummeled in the bubble bursting. And so they're only just coming out the other side here. And as we'll see, they're about to get into a whole world of hurt in the next couple of years. This is like a super high conviction bet. They're investing like essentially a third of Yahoo's cash into this Chinese company that's fighting eBay. So they do it. They raise the $1 billion. Turns out they probably didn't even really need to raise the $1 billion because eBay China just kind of like, it's a house of cards and collapses under its own weight and mismanagement. And eBay at this point then goes off and buys Skype, potentially in part to just cover up the disaster that was China. Like, hey, look over here, which we didn't get into on our Skype episode, but it's a fun side note here. So they do that. Taobao wins in China. They are now the dominant and only player in B2C. And of course, they've got the legacy Alibaba B2B marketplace business as well. The company is just growing like crazy. So on the back of all this, a couple of years later, in November 2007, they decide, Taobao is growing like crazy. It's still young. Jack and Joe decide, what if we want to go public? We want to raise some more capital, but Taobao's still young. What if we list just the legacy the B2B Alibaba business? So they do that.
Which is interesting. We should take a quick second here to look at that. Lots of businesses go public when they have a legacy business and a new growth business. And a lot of the times what they'll wait to do is wait a few quarters into the new growth business so there's some predictability there so they're able to forecast earnings. I was racking my brain when I was reading this of businesses that took the opposite approach of saying, somehow we will only IPO the legacy business line and keep the new growth business line private. I mean, that's at least in sort of the small number of US based IPOs that I'm aware of, that is not something, I don't even know how you would structurally do it. Like you create a holding company, you IPO one business, the holding company owns a bunch of the IPO'd company and the new small company. But either way, it's super messy.
It is super messy. The other interesting thing to remember here, and impossible to know, but like the cap table for Alibaba is pretty crazy at this point. Jack and Joe and all the other co-founders and employees, the other co-founders got serious equity, by the way. Like this was super not normal of Jack. Like it wasn't like they're just token co-founders. Like they had a lot of equity. They own such a small percentage of the business at this point.
Right. And then there's Goldman, there's SoftBank, and there's Yahoo. What year are we in right now?
So we're now in 2007.
One thing worth pointing out, and it's almost just like as a like a point finger and laugh. In 2004, Goldman decided that they should exit the business. And so Goldman managed to turn their $3.3 million on a $10 million valuation of Alibaba into a magnanimous $22 million in 2004 when they exited the business. Unbelievable.
This is unbelievable. So what happened was Shirley Lin, who is the champion for Goldman, she had left Goldman. And this is the point. I meant to say this earlier. eBay is now competing very vocally and on the world stage in China, talking about how they're going to crush Alibaba. Everybody else at Goldman is like, we better get out of this dog. And so the Goldman partnership decides to unload this investment. They sell it off to an investor group, of which a large part of was GGV. And that's how GGV ended up becoming a shareholder in Alibaba. Yeah, that was before, obviously, the Jerry Yang deal. So that happens literally within a year. Yahoo invests $1 billion in the company. eBay completely collapses, and Goldman makes, uncharacteristically for them, probably the worst financial decision maybe in history.
Private company investing is a whole different ballgame. It's hard. It's thrashy,
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty bad. This is a pretty bad decision. Because, like, what's the downside for Goldman to just keeping this? Like, why not, But anyway, so we're now in 2007. They've decided they're going to IPO the legacy Alibaba business. They do that. It goes public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, November 2007, valued at $9 billion at the IPO, closes day one of trading at $26 billion. But again, Taobao, is not part of this, nor is the other big part of the business that they developed probably really through and learned through their fight with eBay. They have this even newer business called Alipay. And Alipay started as the Alibaba version of PayPal. As they're now competing with eBay and doing B2C in China, they realized that people in China, like a big barrier to them adopting this platform is they don't have credit cards or credit or any way of transacting online. And so they need to have a platform like this. So they essentially copy PayPal, create Alipay, and it starts growing hugely, so much so to the point that like you could start to see at this point, and certainly now, Alipay is like the largest financial institution in China because all of these masses of Chinese consumers coming online for the first time, they don't have bank accounts, but they're now transacting online. They need Alipay, and it becomes essentially their financial institution.
It's probably worth a little bit of a detour at this point to talk about the ownership structure of Alibaba itself. So Alibaba has, taken all this investment from Yahoo and others. For a variety of reasons, it is tricky to directly invest into a Chinese entity. So a Chinese entity cannot be owned by a foreign ownership group, especially to the tune of, 40% of the business. There's something called a variable interest entity, or a VIE, that is set up in the Cayman Islands. That is the entity that Yahoo and others actually own. And then there are contractual business relationships between the Cayman Islands entity and Alibaba proper, that is actually owned by Joe Tsai and Jack Ma. So it's important, as we sort of finish here the story of Alipay, to understand exactly what Yahoo owns equity in and exactly how that structure works and why it was set up.
And this all comes to a head pretty much immediately. So the capital that they raised at legacy Alibaba goes back up to the new Alibaba group and is going to be used to fund continuing to build out Taobao and Alipay. Very, very shortly thereafter, in the beginning of 2008, Yahoo's going through all sorts of struggles. Microsoft offers to buy Yahoo very publicly. And this is, all plays out in the press. And probably most of our listeners are aware we'll have to do an episode someday. And in fact, Kara Swisher does the best coverage of this of anybody.
Of
really part of what, kind of makes the act two of her career. Jack and Joe, though, they're like, oh no, like if Yahoo sells to Yahoo owns 40% of Alibaba Group. Like if Yahoo sells to Microsoft, then what's going to happen? Then all of a sudden Microsoft is going to own 40% of Alibaba. They start freaking out and they start talking to Jerry and trying to find ways to buy back the stake that just 2 years earlier, Yahoo had invested in Alibaba. Fortunately for Alibaba, and I got to imagine perhaps as part of this, Jerry Yang rejects the offer from Microsoft to buy Yahoo, but shareholders are like getting out the pitchforks. They demand Jerry Yang's resignation because like Yahoo itself was way overvalued by Microsoft in this acquisition offer, but people didn't quite realize how special Alibaba was yet and how much Yahoo owned of it. So Yang gets forced out and new CEO Carol Bartz comes into Yahoo and she and Jack do not get along. Like there is serious bad blood here because Carol's brought in to be like champion of shareholders and like realize shareholder value at Yahoo. And now people are realizing through all this, like, ooh, a big part of Yahoo's value is this Alibaba stake. And Jack and Joe are like, I'm trying to build a company here. So this does not go well. And this is where the drama with Alipay really starts. So as this is going on in China, remember, there are no big consumer banks. Like they're banks, yes, but like most people in the country do not have traditional consumer bank accounts. And it becomes pretty clear that Alipay or any of its competitors, like these new PayPal-like entities, are going to be the way that the majority of Chinese people bank. The government freaks out about this. So the government, and remember now, Alibaba Group is owned mostly by foreign national people and corporations. So you got SoftBank in Japan, you've got Yahoo in the US, you had Goldman Sachs, who then sold their stake to GGV and others. The Chinese government is like, this isn't going to fly. So they start talking about passing new regulation that all financial entities have to be owned 100% by Chinese nationals, both entities and persons.
Which, of course, Alipay technically is, but sort of spiritually isn't, since they have all these contracts in place to do profit sharing with the ownership group of the Cayman entity.
Right, exactly. It was not gonna fly there. So while this is happening, and of course Jack Ma is bickering with Yahoo and Carol Bartz, Jack transfers Alipay outside of Alibaba Group into a new entity that he and Joe and other Chinese nationals control. And they transfer it for a value of $51 million. By any measure, probably not a accurate reflection of the true value of Alipay, which again is now the biggest bank in China, essentially.
And it only sort of comes out in like a footnote of like a quarterly update the next quarter that they did this. And they use some phrase like, I don't have it exactly in front of me, but like we've unintegrated Alipay from the entity or something like that.
Yeah. So well, remember, Alibaba is, this isn't an issue for Alibaba.com, which is public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It's a major issue for SoftBank and Yahoo. And so it's unclear whether Jack and Alibaba told SoftBank and Yahoo that they were going to do this. Even if they did, Yahoo and SoftBank did not disclose this in their financial reporting. Like what they should have done is immediately issued 8Ks to their shareholders and said that this is happening. They didn't. And so this triggers like all sorts of investor unrest, SEC investigations, all sorts of stuff, because this is massive value that shareholders of, again, Yahoo and SoftBank aren't getting this information.
It's worth, just because we won't cover this too much later, it's worth flashing forward to today. Alipay becomes Ant Financial. Ant Financial is close to an IPO. I think it's like the largest financial institution in the world, or on its way to be. I know it's bigger than Goldman Sachs. This is the story is crazy. We've done as much work as we can to figure it all out. Again, listeners, if you know more than us, let us know. And we're trying to keep these episodes shorter, which is going phenomenally well right now, isn't it?
Yeah, phenomenally well. Anyway, finally, in 2012, Alibaba settles the situation with Yahoo. They agree that after years of bickering, that Alibaba is going to buy back half of Yahoo's stake, so 20% Alibaba, for $7.1 billion, plus an agreement that another 25% of the stake Yahoo will exit either in an IPO or sell back directly to Alibaba.
Which Yahoo, I think, does do. They sell 27% at the IPO.
They do. But that's not all of Yahoo's stake, as we'll see in just a sec. But at least it's voting rights. So now, once that's happened, between SoftBank and Yahoo, they no longer control majority ownership in Alibaba. This paves the way for Alibaba Group to file to go public, which they do in 2014.
Alibaba Group buys back all of the Alibaba.com shares, so pulls that off the Hong Kong exchange so that they can IPO the whole thing on the U.S. exchange, on the New York Stock Exchange. Notably, not the NASDAQ, which tech stocks typically go out on, but Alibaba Group cites two bankers. We did not trust the stability of the NASDAQ platform after the Facebook debacle, since we're going to be doing a significantly larger IPO, and trading was halted for 4 hours or whatever when Facebook went out. So
totally. And trading still gets halted when Alibaba comes out, but it wasn't as bad. $25 billion IPO in 2014, still the largest IPO in history, closes up
anywhere.
Period. Full stop.
And just to put that in some context, Visa in 2008 was 18 billion. Facebook was 16 billion. GM in 2010, when the government re-IPO'd it, was only $16 billion. Goldman Sachs, just to give because they're a big part of this episode, in May of 99, they IPO'd for 3.7 billion. So to give you a sense of the true scale of this, there's 4 IPOs ever above $15 billion, and then they quickly go down into the 3, 4, 5, 6 range after that. So
yeah, they end the first day up 25% at a market cap of just under $240 billion, which at the time is larger than Amazon and eBay combined, which is crazy. And again, I remember this happening. Like, most people, in the US, even in tech, they were like, oh, Alibaba, like, that's like the Amazon of China again, right? Like, people didn't really understand this, but the institutional community was like, this was the hottest IPO of all time.
Oh, yeah.
And finally unwinding this whole crazy structure and getting access to investors in this is incredible.
Yeah, and I've got some good acquired IPO trivia here. So the guidance was 60 to 66 per share. It priced at 68. The stock actually opened at 92 and then went up from there. Like, everything about this was crazy. Alibaba's underwriters announced that they had exercised a green shoe option to sell 15% more shares than originally planned, boosting the total IPO to $25 billion from the originally planned $21.8 billion. David, do you know what a green shoe option is and why it is called that?
I did actually used to know the answer to both of those questions. I think I recall, but please elucidate.
Basically, it's when the underwriters are allowed to support the share price after the offering without putting their own capital at risk. So they're basically allowed to sell more to support the share price. The reason it's called a green shoe option was the first company to ever do it and have this written in as a term with their underwriters was Green Shoe Manufacturing, which is now StrideRight.
Ah, what do you know?
There you go. There's your trivia for the day.
I always thought it was like same as like the white shoe law firms of like,
I thought that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it was green shoes because, they're bankers. They make so much more money than the lawyers who only have the white shoes. Good to know. Good to know.
In this IPO, when Yahoo sold their stake, that was a casual $9.4 billion in cash flowing into an entity that has no cash and no growth, which is just fascinating to think about and how rare that is.
Well, let's come back to that. So the IPO happens. There's some ups and downs that we'll just gloss over here as a public company. But a year later, they're actually trading under the IPO price. Things aren't going well. There's some drama with the Chinese government about piracy on the platform. That all gets settled. As a result, though, Jack had already stepped back into the chairman role of Alibaba Group. He was no longer CEO of either Alibaba, or he was never CEO of Taobao or Tmall or Alipay. The CEO of Alibaba Group, though, Jeffrey Liu, gets replaced by the COO, Daniel Zhang, who's now still the CEO of Alibaba Group. Anyway, though, 2017, Yahoo gets acquired by Verizon. So now what? Is Verizon going to own? Because Yahoo still owns 15% of Alibaba.
Which is crazy, right? They sold $9.4 billion and they still own 15% of the public company.
Right. So what's going to happen to this? Is a U.S. telecom company now going to own 15% of Alibaba? No.
Yeah, so as it turns out, and I remembered reading this at the time, but had completely forgotten about it, what Verizon actually bought was not Yahoo Inc., but was Yahoo's internet presence and their website and their brand and the whole Yahoo business. But they did not buy Yahoo Japan or the stake in Alibaba, which were then transferred to a separate entity, sort of all the remaining pieces of Yahoo that are not Yahoo that went to Verizon. And that separate entity is called Altaba.
I think this is actually like the best part of the whole story for all the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And the length of the whole, this is the best part of the story.
So Altaba is a publicly traded company based out of New York that owns two things. Actually, I think they're about to own one thing because it sounds like they're divesting Yahoo Japan. They own a series of other things, actually including some of SeatGeek, some of Eastman Kodak, some of Paperless, some of Hortonworks. Like they're doing some investing.
They owned like a 6% stake in Snap at one point.
Yeah. That which they sold in September 2017 for $70 million. So Altaba is this thing that is worth a bunch because it owns 15% of Alibaba. Like it's a publicly traded thing with a market cap of $38 billion that by looking around LinkedIn has 10 employees, all of which are finance and operations.
And the CFO is based in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yes. Every employee is in New York and San Francisco except for the CFO in Omaha. Crazy that this entity exists.
Yeah, $38 billion market cap for Altaba, which, yeah, okay, that's crazy. 10 people at this company have a $38 billion market cap. The crazier thing is that 15% of Alibaba, like the value of their stake in Alibaba, is over $80 billion. Like Alibaba is now a 420-something billion market cap company.
Well, Altaba's market cap is like 39 billion. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, it's trading at a significant discount to the value of their.
Oh, interesting. Like because they can't get liquid on it?
Yeah. I think it's that the market thinks like, this is crazy. Like Jack Ma and Alibaba probably hate this. And so they'll do anything as they have done in the past to like transfer Alipay out.
So it could be like share tenders for lower prices.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to, like, there's just risk here of like what's going to happen. But like, that's a serious discount to the value of the shares that they have.
That's a good way to get some potentially high risk exposure to the Alibaba upside.
Indeed. Oh, or you could just buy Alibaba stock. The end of the story here, I promise, is just this week. Jack Ma announced that he is going to fully retire 1 year from September 10th. So September 10th, 2019, he is going to fully remove himself from the company. He will no longer be chairman. Daniel Zhang, the current CEO, is going to also assume the chairman title. And he's going to turn himself full-time to philanthropy, similar to Bill and Melinda Gates.
Pretty cool. It's amazing. Now that you know his story, listeners, he is a just absolute icon and hero in China. I mean, if you think Bezos and Gates and Elon Musk kind of combined, he's inspired the masses. Well,
and what's so cool, his story is so unique. I mean, he was born right before the Cultural Revolution happened in a tier 2 city in China and didn't start his first company until he was 29 years old. Was terrible at math, like still jokes he doesn't get technology. But like from that, he has become, arguably like, I mean, up for debate, but you could make an argument that Alibaba is the most important technology company in the world right now. Has turned it into, $500 billion in market cap.
All right, listeners. Now is a great time to thank our longtime friend of the show, ServiceNow. If you are running a large enterprise, AI agents are likely spread across every team, and deploying them is no longer the hard part.
Yeah. The hard part is knowing what permissions they have, what employees are using them for, or what decisions AI is making. AI security for an enterprise at scale is not a small concern. Like, the risks are real.
Exactly. And the challenge with AI is governing it, securing it, measuring it, and making sure that it actually delivers value. That is why ServiceNow built the AI Control Tower.
Yep. AI Control Tower gives enterprises a single place to see, manage, govern, and optimize AI across the entire business. And it works with any AI, not just theirs. Every device on your network, every permission across every system, every AI agent visible and secure in one place.
And ServiceNow can do this because they've spent more than 20 years building the operational backbone of the enterprise, the workflows, governance, approvals, security controls, and institutional knowledge that power how work actually gets done across IT, HR, customer service, finance, and security.
ServiceNow already runs more than 100 billion workflows annually and trillions of transactions for more than 85% of the Fortune 500. So when companies need a place to govern AI at enterprise scale, they're building on a platform at the center of how their business already operates.
And in a future that isn't going to be one AI, it's going to be thousands of AI agents working across every function of the company. But the question is, who's managing them all?
So if you're trying to turn AI ambition into real business outcomes and make it work safely, securely, at scale, go check out servicenow.com/acquired and tell them that Ben and David sent you.
If you're listening to this episode, it's worthwhile to walk away with a little bit of an understanding of the shape of the current Alibaba business because they have a lot of different brands. And I think I was pretty confused coming into this before doing the research. So I sort of try to consolidate a little bit of an understanding of what all their properties are and what their strategy is. So we've talked about Alibaba.com. We've talked about Taobao, which is their consumer-to-consumer marketplace, which is the most popular consumer-to-consumer marketplace in the world. And the phrase is, if it's not available on Taobao, it's not available anywhere in China or probably anywhere in the world. They've launched a new site, 1688.com, since, somewhere along the lines. I don't have great dates here, but that is like Alibaba, but instead of being international, it's a domestic B2B trade site in China. They also have Tmall.com, which is B2C. It's an online marketplace for quality brand name goods that competes with JD.com. It's similar to Amazon.com. Think third-party sellers selling to consumers. That's Tmall. They've got AliExpress, which is also B2C like Tmall, except in sort of quality brand name goods. It's small businesses in China that can sell anywhere internationally. So you can buy, it's actually pretty fun to go to AliExpress and just see what kind of crazy stuff you can buy. It often will take like 3 to 9 weeks to ship to you in the US, and it may or may not come. And you have really no idea who you're buying from or any sort of quality standards, but like stuff is crazy cheap and it's super eccentric and you can find wild stuff, and it may be like how it's pictured, it may be not, but I've bought some stuff and it's super fun to see what you can find on AliExpress. They also have eTao, which is a shopping search engine. Obviously Alipay, which they've spun out, and then Alibaba Cloud Computing is sort of their big bet on the future. And when you look at their financials today, cloud computing represents 6% of revenue. The China commerce is 70%, international commerce is 8%, but 6% coming from cloud computing, 7% coming from what they call digital media, which is interesting to juxtapose against an Amazon. We keep hearing AWS. It's a super high margin business relative to the rest of their business. AWS, their quarterly revenue last quarter was 11%. So you sort of look at these high growth, high margin things inside of these companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, their cloud computing division, they're sort of, right in that same ballpark. I think AWS looks to be about twice as big, but I think AWS may include some of what Alibaba would call digital media and innovation efforts. So when you kind of squint, you can see that both of these businesses are trying to make cloud computing a real higher margin part of their business at the same time and using the same strategy there.
And then, of course, the other piece, which, as we discussed, is not part of Alibaba Group, but is part of this business, which is like Goldman Sachs plus Bank of America plus PayPal all in one, which is Alipay.
Yep, absolutely.
And might end up being bigger than all of this combined.
So that's sort of the sense of what the revenue streams and the properties owned by Alibaba are. And I wanted to finish with a quote from Jack Ma that really sort of sums up, it's a little bit of a block quote here, from 2015. We'll include a link in the show notes to a talk that he gave. But he frequently has asked this question, what is the difference between Amazon and Alibaba? And he said, the difference is we do not buy and we do not sell, but we help small businesses to buy and sell. This is 2015 numbers, but we have 10 million small businesses on our site that buy and sell every day. We do not deliver packages ourselves, though we have more than 2 million people who help to deliver our 30 million packages per day. We do not own warehouses, but we manage tens of thousands of other small and medium-sized delivery companies. We do not own any inventory, but we have more than 350 million buyers, 120 million buyers coming to shop with us every day. Our global revenue is 390 billion, possibly bigger than Walmart globally. Here in America, e-commerce is e-commerce. In China, e-commerce is a lifestyle. It's like Starbucks. It's not about how much people like coffee. It's about the lifestyle of going to Starbucks. So it's fascinating thinking about sort of the shape of the business, the fact that it's super low asset. Like it's a very asset light business relative to Amazon that has warehouses and delivery trucks. They just bought like 20,000 more delivery trucks or something.
Alibaba has none of that. Yeah.
None of it. Super asset light.
Jack also talks about like his, I think he means this as like his vision, but also the business model of the company. Like they support entrepreneurs. He was an entrepreneur in China multiple times before starting Alibaba. So how do they make all that work? There are thousands of entrepreneurs who have logistics companies that operate on the platform. There are thousands of entrepreneurs who are sellers on the platform. They just provide the platform for everybody. As you say, I mean, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's like this, it's like Amazon plus Google, like it's Amazon with the capital intensity attributes of Google.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Yeah, super cool. So that's in an hour and a half or less. The history and facts of Alibaba. Should we move on?
Yeah. I mean, we do narratives on the show, so we're switching our narratives theme to be specific to what's the bull case, what's the bear case. I think we've made a lot of it along the way here. The bull case is easy. When they were getting ready to IPO, they had 280 million customers spending $300 billion a year on everything. It was the dominant way that people bought things on the internet in the largest emerging economy in the world. They handle 86% of online retail sales in China. Like, how bananas is that?
That's a bunch of bananas.
I don't know the share price, but it's not hard to believe that this is going to be a juggernaut for a long time. Or I guess I don't know how to look at how much is priced in, but that the bull case is, come on, guys, how could you not believe in this? There's a few reasons to be a bear. One was that the IPO price people believed was too high because they do have a large growth multiple. I mean, the company is sort of expected to continue growing at this crazy rate that it's been growing. And of course, we're talking in terms of 2014 here, but it's already a huge company. Like it's already doing 86% of e-commerce in China. So how could it possibly keep growing at the rate that it needs to in order to fulfill the market cap? The other bear case is people basically saying, look, I don't trust the structure. I'm not directly buying a share in the thing that creates the value. I'm buying shares in a thing that has an agreement with a thing that creates value.
I think this was probably the biggest knock against the company in the IPO. And the risk is like, what is going on with Alipay? Like,
Right. And not to mention, whenever you're buying a Chinese IPO, there's the factor of, I don't know how risky things that the government could do will be.
Like potentially force. I mean, it's unclear why they did it, but probably because at least in part because of the government, forcing this business to transfer its most promising, potentially largest future business outside of the company.
Yep. That's the sort of bear and bull case. If you look at where it IPO'd in 2014, the market cap was
just under 240 billion.
Okay. So has approximately doubled since then. It was up in the low 500s earlier this year. It's now down around 400. But, over 4 years, they've managed to double their market cap. They obviously generated a ton of cash and continue to reinvest that.
Well, we're bleeding into tech themes, so I might as well just say it. I mean, like, I can't think of, we haven't covered the B and the T yet of BAT in China.
It's Baidu and Tencent.
Yes. So I may revise this statement after doing that, but I don't think so. Like, I think you could make an argument that there is no entrepreneur and no company that has ridden a bigger wave better than Alibaba has. And that wave is the consumerization of China and the rise of middle class in China from nothing. And if you think about Alibaba, it went from they just timed this perfectly. They went from capitalizing on businesses being started in China. So entrepreneurs, this is the beginning of Made in China. Alibaba was there for that and helped facilitate Made in China getting distributed around the world. Then they were there with Taobao to bought in China. What do all the entrepreneurs and people who started businesses and people who work in these businesses who've now made money, they want to producing things, now they want to consume. Alibaba rode that better than anybody and beat eBay at its own game. Now what's next is like, what happens to all that wealth in China? Like, who manages it? Like, where are these people going to keep their money? How are they going to manage it? How are they going to grow it? Who's best positioned to do that? Alibaba and Alipay. It's incredible.
It really is the ultimate marketplace business. I mean, I think you think about like the ultimate sort of, there's bleeding into mine on page 139 of the F1, which is sort of the foreign filing of the S1. They have a slide that's the network effect on and across our marketplaces. And there are a Disney-like amount of arrows that are between all these different properties and how it all fuels each other. And David, not only did they ride the wave well, but they created it just incredible number of moats around their business and around how it's absolutely a no-brainer for everyone in the ecosystem to use their infrastructure.
Totally. I mean, I'm so excited that Jack Ma's retiring because we're going to have to call him up at Wave and ask if we can back his new business. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's I mean, he's the best marketplace entrepreneur of all time. I mean, we'll take Bezos, but like, right. I think head to head, I would have to choose Jack here.
Wow. Bold. Another one that I've got is just as customer obsessed as Amazon. Jack regularly says the priorities of our business are that the customer is number one, employees are number two, and the shareholders are number three. And a big part of why he talks about that is, when things have gone rocky for our business, shareholders have gone away, and capital hasn't always been there for us, and certainly hasn't been incredibly supportive. And our employees stick with us, but it's really always about the customer. A lot of people say that. It's easy to say, but when you prioritize things, the important bit that you're saying is not what you're calling the first priority. It's what you're calling not the first priority, and being willing to commit to being consistent in saying that other thing is not the highest priority for us. And so I think in doing a lot of crazy things to satisfy the customer, they're often giving up margin, but it's been a 20-year bet, much like Amazon, to do that.
Well, it's about trade-offs, right? I mean, like, and you've seen it in the history, right? Like Jack was willing to be incredibly generous, perhaps to the point of ludicrously so, with the company's equity, not only in equity for employees, but the investments he took and how much he was willing to give up to shareholders. But it comes from a mindset of like, what do I need to do to build the base to have the employees who can serve the customers? Like, I need that capital. Like, so, okay, I'll sell 40% of the company, like, because that's going to help me have the employees and the infrastructure to serve the customers best. My other tech theme that I think this story like illustrates really well, and this is subtle and hard to get in the investing world and hard to get right, but like Jack does this so well in the company. If you're in a market that you think is going to grow rapidly in the future, like small businesses in China, like consumers in China, like wealth in China, what matters is not who has the most market share of that market today. What matters is who is going to have the most market share tomorrow. And this is like, I mean, that sounds obvious, right? But like, look at, I think you can apply this framework to food delivery in the US, right? Like food delivery, was a super quote unquote over-invested category a few years ago. You had DoorDash, you had Postmates, you've got Caviar, you've got, Amazon Prime Now and all this stuff. And people are like, why are people throwing money at this? And like, why does it matter? And, isn't this category done? Well, no, it was just getting started, right? Like, and so now, DoorDash is like a $5 billion company, right? And like people thought it was crazy to invest in that. But what mattered wasn't like who was winning at the time. What mattered was who was going to win in 2 or 3 years when the market was much, much bigger.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. Yeah, I think you and I were having a conversation around a separate topic last week, and actually, this is what we were thinking about. We were thinking about acquired sponsorship stuff, and we were like, "Great, we have this pile of money from sponsorship. How much should we plow into growth?" And you said, "Well, do you still think there's growth ahead of us?" And I was like, "Well, absolutely." And you're like, "Well, then all of it In fact, more. How do we go, like where can we go borrow to be able to invest even harder? And so it's such an interesting framework for thinking about a business that it's like, to the extent that you believe there's growth ahead of you, you should invest 110%. And to the extent where you feel like you've had all the growth you can, that's when you start harvesting.
Yeah, totally. Or like, Google, Dropbox are both great examples of this. Before Google, there were lots of search engines, right? Google, Alta Vista or Yahoo or whatever had so much more market share. But like the question was, in the totality of the search market, where most consumers have not yet come online. And so like there was still an opportunity to win those future consumers. Same in storage. Like there were tons of storage companies before Dropbox and Box, right? But like the vast majority of the market hadn't happened yet. And so they could win that future market. Well, should we move on to grading?
Let's do it. So normally the way that we grade IPOs is for the post-IPO shareholders of the entity or just say the shareholders of the entity was IPOing a good idea and did it allow them to do value creating activities with the cash that they generated? That's also relative to their other options. Alibaba is such an outlier in every way that I can't point my finger to one thing that having that cash allowed them to do that if they didn't IPO, they wouldn't have been able to do. I can't point my finger to like one reason why they needed to go public, but like it was the inevitable thing. They did it in a phenomenal way. They've grown really well since then. It's hard to not see this be an A, and it kind of breaks a lot of our criteria.
Yeah. Well, even just think about this, right? Like, the stock has doubled since the IPO 4-ish years ago. Okay. Sounds fine, right? Like that sounds like not bad performance, but not amazing. But what does that mean? The stock has doubled. That means that at IPO, it was a $240 billion market cap company. They have created $240 billion of market cap
value creation basis rather than a relative one. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Like that's insanity.
Where else can you go park 200 billion to turn it into 400 billion? One of like Apple or Amazon a few years ago. No, well, they don't have the same growth, anywhere close to the same growth rates. No, they do. Amazon is definitely
Amazon was a better investment.
Fast.
Yeah. Amazon was a better investment in terms of just market cap creation. But what's interesting about this, I'll get to grading, I promise, is what has happened is so clear. Like doing this episode, doing this research to me is now so clearly I see where the Vision Fund came from, because like Masa and SoftBank parked, a long time ago, a small amount of money, but like when this was the largest IPO ever, right? And in 4 years has doubled in size and thus created 250, call it $1 billion of market cap. I think he saw that and was like, oh, these huge tech companies in huge categories can still create like it's is your value creation ahead of you or behind you? It took Alibaba 19 years to get to a $240 billion market cap. It took them 4 years to create another $240 billion of market cap. You can invest these huge sums of capital and still get massive dollar returns on it. So you look at that and then you look at like through that lens and you look at what they've done with ride sharing, with Uber, with Grab, with Didi, with all the other ride sharing companies they've invested in and other stuff that they're doing. I think it's informed by this insight, right?
Yeah, that's a really good. I mean, he had a front row seat to all of it, so he has a lot of reason to believe that it's possible and can happen again.
Yep. Now, of course, you're like going to be wrong on this,
Sure.
but
that's why it's a fund.
Well, then that's why it's a fund, right? But like that's what's interesting here is like if something works, it's almost like venture capital dynamics. Like you 2x a huge investment, but you just 2x like that's $250 billion of market cap there. Like that can pay for a lot of losers.
It can.
Yeah. So grade, this was for sure an A, because otherwise, like this value creation, A, wouldn't have happened in the public markets, but B, I think it's unlocked like a whole new way of thinking about technology investing. And we may look back on this in a few years and be like, man, what were we smoking back then? But I think if you look at the fundamentals of Alibaba and the business, just like we've been talking about, it's like it's real, like they're going to be the largest financial institution in China. They already are. They're going to be the largest financial institution in the world. That's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ant Financial episode will have to come soon.
Yeah, coming soon. All right.
Carve Outs.
Carve Outs.
All right. Mine is the Origins podcast by the guys over at Notation Capital, which is a great podcast all around. But on episode 33, they had Mike Maples Jr. from Floodgate Capital on. And Floodgate was really one of the first seed funds in 2005, 0405 in the Valley. And Mike is brilliant and a visionary and knows what he's talking about, and he's got some numbers to prove it. So he revealed on the podcast they invested $750,000 in Lyft at 5.5 million post. They were in Twitch at a 3 million pre. They were in Weebly at a 2.1 million pre. I mean, they've just had some awesome investments over the years. This podcast is so interesting because, so the Origins podcast is a podcast for LPs and sort of about the relationship between VCs and LPs. There's sort of no one who's thought more deeply about that than Mike over the years. And one of the really interesting points that he talks about is how your fund size is your strategy. And a lot of people set out with a strategy and then raise a different fund size because they were targeting something and didn't hit it, or they were oversubscribed and decided to open it up more, or in some ways, somehow their fund size ended up being discongruent from their strategy because they were aiming on a set of things where there was only a finite number of companies, but they were very successful. So now they have a freaking huge fund and they have to figure out what to do about that. I haven't been this enlightened on sort of thinking about the venture landscape in a while. And I think that if you're interested in why venture is hard and what competencies it takes to be a venture investor, it's really, really interesting. And I can't suggest it highly enough. So Mike Maples Jr. on the Origins podcast.
Super good. I love the Origins guys. And Mike was just great on this podcast. So definitely recommend. And it's been, this has been my life for the past 2 years, is figuring out our strategy at Wave and our fund size and aligning all that. And it's actually a lot harder than you might think. And we've had to do a lot of thinking and planning around that, and are still doing so even, after we've raised the fund and are making investments. So super great. Anybody who cares about the business of venture, we will love this podcast. Mine is very relevant to this episode. So way back, I can't remember what episode, maybe it was Snap. I did as a Carve Out the Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which is fantastic, always worth rereading. Sort of inspired by that and some other stuff, and this mini series on China that we're doing. I just finished reading The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is another ancient Chinese text. And it's kind of like, this is a super bastardization of it, but in general, you could think of this as like a very extended, novelized version of the concepts in The Art of War. It's super cool. It was written in the 14th century, about the 2nd century, the Three Kingdoms era of China, and battles between them, and famous generals and warlords. And it's super cool. It's historical fiction. All of these things happened. They definitely didn't happen as described in the novel. There's magic and all sorts of stuff, but it's like a novelized version of history, and really fun to read. It gives a lot more insight into the very short stuff in The Art of War. Oh, that's what he's talking about. So
well, cool. I got to add it to the list. It's a long list.
Yeah. If you've got a couple months to get through thousands of pages of translated Chinese text, highly recommend it.
Perfect.
All right, listeners, now is a great time to talk about one of our favorite companies, Statsig.
Yes, long-time acquired partner. There is a reason why the best product teams at companies like OpenAI and Notion, Atlassian, Figma, Rippling, Brex, and more rely on Statsig, whether they are iterating on their core product features or shipping AI-powered experiences at scale.
Yep. In the crazy speed of today's AI world, shipping fast is just table stakes now. It's basically trivial to build and deploy your app constantly. The real advantage is how quickly you learn what changes actually created value for customers, and how fast you can use that signal to guide what you ship next. Whether it's a feature tweak, a pricing change, a performance improvement, or an AI update like a model change or prompt adjustment, they're not relying on instinct. They're measuring what actually moved engagement, retention, and ultimately revenue. And as more teams build with AI, that learning loop becomes even more important. Building with LLMs introduces non-determinism into your product experience. The same input doesn't always produce the same output, and behavior can shift in subtle ways in real-world use.
So doing offline evals will give you part of the picture, but you can really only understand the impact once your product is live with real users, and then you can measure how their behavior actually changes. It's very different than the way that you would ship features in a pre-AI world where you knew exactly what the software was going to do in production.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is where StatSig comes in. It brings experimentation, feature flags, and product analytics into one unified system so teams can ship safely, test rigorously, and directly link what they changed to how users actually behaved. The result is a tighter feedback loop and learning that compounds over time, so you don't just ship more, you ship better.
So if you want to make learning your competitive advantage, whether you're building new AI experiences or just evolving your existing core product, go to statsig.com/acquired to get started.
All right, listeners, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for going on another journey with us. If you like the show, tell your friends, scream it on the internet, however your favorite way to do so, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Indeed. We'll see you next time.